Quantum leap. I tend to be the type of person where I question everything. So for me, the biggest questions about this show would have been these: what, when, who, what if, and why. What happens in your show? Why does it happen? When does it happen? Who does it happen to, or who does it? What if? Out of those questions, the two biggest questions I'd have to ask would be what if and why. What if that happened? What if this happened? What if something did not happen? And why? How come? There's plenty of times where I've asked about Quantum Leap, what if? What if I could spend a day in the life of the Evil Leapers and see how they saw their Quantum Leap project? See how they spent their time doing what they did, and why. What if I knew who was controlling Sam's leaps? Was it Al, the bartender? Was it Sam himself? Was it somebody else that nobody knew about? And why? Why do things happen? Why do things don't happen? Why are there things that the viewers can't see? Like, who controls Sam's leaps? Why can't people see that? Why is such a question unanswered? Or would it have ever been answered had the show continued past its 5 seasons? What if, why, when, what, who? For me, these are the questions that make up the mysteries of this show. These are the questions that compel me to this show, draw me in, make me want to watch this show, and find the answers for those questions. The interesting thing about these questions are that everybody's answers could be different. Everybody's answers could be the same. That's something that's not known. The show gives you certain information, but not everything else. So the viewers are left wondering what, when, who, why, if, and whatever other questions there may be. That, I think, is the most interesting part about this show, is not so much the questions themselves, but what the answers could be for them as well, if there are any. Not only that as well, but on top of that, what the answers could be by the people who view the show, and seeing different perspectives from different people. I really think that's very interesting, what people could think about the questions I've just brought up. Seeing many people answer, if they have any answers, and what those answers would be, what people's thought processes would be about what if, who, when, why, and just seeing different views and different perspectives on the what ifs, whys, whens, whats. I'm very big on looking at one thing from many different perspectives. So with me, looking at Quantum Leap, it's like opening a can of worms that I look at everything in the show, to do with the show, and look at it from many different perspectives. It's like walking 1,000 miles in another person's boots, grabbing somebody's boots and being able to walk the extra mile with it. And when I say that, I do mean this. I tended to look at this show thinking, how would it have been like being in the shoes of Sam Beckett if he knew what was controlling or who was controlling his leaps? How would the perspective of the show be looking through his eyes if that were the case? If he were at home, at work, if he were at home with his family, how was he like at work? How would Quantum Leap as a show, and how would Sam Beckett's life in the show be viewed prospectively from his shoes had things been just a little bit different? In this case, knowing who or what controlled his leaps. How would things have been like looking through his eyes had things just been a little different regarding his leaps? How would his workplace be like? How would he be like in that environment? How would he have been like around his family, at his house, around his family environment? How would the people around him at his work be like? Another angle could be, how would it have been like being in the life of one of the evil leapers for a day? How would their perspective, how would it look like looking at Quantum Leap through any of the evil leapers' eyes? Would they have known about evil? The evil leapers, would have they known about Quantum Leap or Al or Sam or anybody associated with it? So how would Quantum Leap be viewed from the evil leapers' point of view? How would it be like getting their eyes and looking at the show through their eyes? How would the show have looked looking at it through our eyes, Al Kelly-Vichi's eyes? How would it be spending a day in the life of Al? I mean, I do know that what I'm touching on here, there is that episode where there was an episode where both Sam and Elle switched places, if I remember right. So there was a small glimpse on how things might have happened if both their positions were switched over, which I found very interesting. But that's kind of where I'm going with this in a way. Looking at the show through other people's eyes was something that was and still is very, very interesting to me. That pulls me in, makes me wonder how would the show itself, the very core of the show itself, be seen through other people's eyes, through other people's perspectives? How would it have been seen? How would all the characters have been seen through other people's eyes? You see, this is getting back to my opening a can of worms, because there's a whole, or walking an extra mile in another person's boots, because there's a whole lot of possibilities that could be seen through looking at the show through another person's eyes. And for me, that's kind of the sucker punch that really pulled me into the show and really made it very, very interesting, because for the 5 seasons I looked at Quantum Leap through Al and Sam's eyes, but not really through anybody else's, and that is something that I really was interested in seeing, how the show would have looked like through the eyes of somebody else that was in the show. I mean, how would Quantum Leap have looked in the eyes of one of the characters that Sam leapt into, or somebody connected to that character that Sam leapt into? Like I think in some cases, if I remember right, an animal or a young child was able to see Al because they'd be on the same wavelength. If I remember correctly, they'd be on the same wavelength with Al or Sam or both of them. So you see, that regards how would a small child have seen Al? What would they have? What would their thoughts have been seeing Al, somebody that they don't know? I mean, geez, even looking at how would somebody that Sam's leapt into and then leapt out of be thinking? How would they have been? What would they have been thinking? Well, would they have known somebody's just leapt into him? After, I mean, yeah, obviously they probably would have, because they'd be in the imaging chamber, but still. I mean, it's not so much for the person that Sam's leapt into, but the people that would have been connected to that person. How would they have seen things? Would they have understood that something was going on in regards to the Quantum Leap project? If so, how would they have seen the Quantum Leap project? How would have the young child who could see Al, or even an animal perhaps, what would their view have been, and why? What would they have thought, and how come? I find that very, very interesting. My point is here is perspectives, looking at the one thing from many different perspectives, and looking at how it would have been seen via those different perspectives, if I make any sense here, which I hope I do. But that's really what I love. I find very interesting about the show as well. And I'm a big believer on looking at the one thing in many different perspectives and seeing and seeing what information comes out of that. Really find that very, very interesting, and that's my whole point here. Quantum Leap. One thing about this show that I'm very intrigued about, and that I'm completely over the moon and obsessed by it. I don't care what anybody says, I'm just obsessed about questions and answers, and the mysteries of the unanswered questions, the big what if. I think that's a very big question about this show that many people could have many answers to. I just love the mystery behind the big what if. The answers, if any, behind the things about the show that people did not see, or the show itself did not show to its viewers. As I've already mentioned, and I know I'd be repeating myself here, but the big what ifs, for me especially, who were the evil leapers? Who controlled Sam's leaps? Who was that character? Who was this character? What's their backstory? What's the story behind them? Who was Sam Beckett? What's his life story? Who is Gucci? What's Gucci's life story? Or Ziggy? What's the go with Ziggy? What's the history of Ziggy? Many questions, and quite possibly many more answers, if there are any. You see, that's also a mystery in itself, is that there's a lot of questions that may not even necessarily have an answer to them. And that, for me, is what I mean by the mystery, is that there's the questions there, there's quite possibly answers for, or quite possibly no answers for. So the viewer, like myself, is left wondering what the answer could be for a certain question, or questions, answers. Would there be any answers to any questions that I have? And if so, what are they? Or is the show itself one big question that I have to interpret myself? Is the show something that people have to interpret the answers for certain questions themselves? Or would questions for the show have been answered by the people who create the show? I just love the big mystery about what if. The mystery behind the questions, and the mystery itself as to whether there would be an answer to those questions, and if there weren't any answers to those questions. And if there were any answers to the questions, what were they? I just love the fact that the questions are there and they make me think. about what could be behind the question. What could the answer be? Is there an answer? What? I'd be left there wondering what the answers are. I'd be thinking. I find that really, really fascinating. That the questions could be posed without understanding what the questions could lead to. Really fascinating stuff. Really, really is. To me, Quantum Leap, in my eyes, I mean, this may not necessarily be true or the way that everybody else thinks. People may disagree with what I'm about to say here, and if that's the case, well, that's fine. But I'll say it anyway. My perception of this show was that there were limitations to it. To it. There were limitations set to the show. For example, if I remember right, Sam, I remember Al saying to Sam, if I remember right, well, you can't tell anybody who you are or what you're doing, or it could jeopardize what you're doing, and you may not come back home. If I remember, Al said that or something to that effect, telling Sam that he shouldn't go off telling people who he was or what he was doing. And if I remember well, that would be an example. Another example would be that he, I think it was the string theory, where Sam leapt within his own lifetime. They'd be just two examples of what I'm talking about when I say limitations that it set to the show. I don't mean that in a bad way. I thought it was very you see, this is where I find it interesting that the limitations were set on the show, and the boundaries weren't pushed. But one of the great mysteries of the show would have been to see what would have happened if the limitations were pushed, if the boundaries were pushed, poked and prodded to see what would happen, what answers would come up, if any. What would have happened in the show? How would the show have been if Sam were able to freely go and tell other people who he was and what he was doing? What would the show have been if Sam was able to leap absolutely into anybody in absolutely any time, anywhere? What would the possibilities have been if these things were able to happen? I really think that was very interesting about the show, as well as anything else that I've spoken about, because the limitations are set, they're there, but you don't know, or you may not know, I do understand that in certain cases those limitations were poked and prodded at times. I mean, Killing Time was an episode where he told one of the characters in his show who he was and what he was doing, and I do understand that there were other episodes where young children would have been able to see Al, so they'd get a small glimpse of, even though they wouldn't have understood what was happening, they would have seen something there that, oh well, why is that man there for? Who is it? But I thought it would have been very interesting to poke and prod at those limitations a little bit more and find out the what ifs. You know, what would have happened if Sam were able to go off and tell people who he was freely and why he was there. Why? What would have happened if Sam were able to leap outside of his lifetime? What would he have seen, and why? Brilliant stuff, absolutely vintage stuff, really interesting stuff that makes me think. Really does. Possibilities could be absolutely endless with what could have happened with the show. Really, yep. Quantum Leap. You see, the one thing that I really loved about this show was the human kindness about that some people had in the show, or that several people had in the show. When I say human kindness, I mean that people actually had a heart. They had a heart of gold, that people were walking heartbeat. When I say that, I mean that a good example would be Sam Beckett, that he had a heart of gold in my eyes because he compromised himself by attempting his experiment, his time travel experiment, when the fact of the matter was that he never ended up leaping back home. But he did that, leaping from life to help other people. In my eyes, he did compromise himself because he never came back home. And why'd he go off leaping around when he couldn't get back home? In my eyes, he's put himself in a position where he couldn't help himself, but he's done that to help everybody else. And for me, that's something that's very special and deeply touching. I mean, that almost puts a tear, that actually does put a tear to my eye to see that somebody would help everybody else at their expense. I don't mean that in a bad way either. When I say it at their own expense, the chap has gone off leaping. He can't get back home, but he does it to help everybody else. There's a human kindness about the guy that makes him a walking heart. That he helps people. He helps people. He helps everybody, regardless who they are, what they are, humans, animals. He helps equally, women, men, animals, regardless, race, sex, animal, whether people have committed a crime or not. He's helped everyone. He's helped the person in killing time that the law was after. He's helped the chimpanzee, Bobo. He's helped an animal there, leapt into an animal and helped them. He's helped everybody regardless of who, what, sex, crime committed or non-committed, people who haven't committed a crime. He's helped a whole spectrum of people, animals too. So for me, I find that very touching that somebody has the human kindness to that extent of Sam Beckett. And it's not just him, but that there's other people that try and help him to come back home, like Al Kelly Vici, the crew at the Quantum Leap. As far as I'm concerned, they're just as kind as him to try and get him back home. Why? Because he has a family back home. He has people that he works with. I think that's deeply, deeply touching that Quantum Leap touches on the fact that people have their heart and know how to use it. I truly think the heart is a beautiful thing if you know how to use it, and I think that Quantum Leap has touched into that and used that to show that there's a good and beautiful side to people. And I think that's really, really great stuff. Awesome, vintage stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Great stuff. What character do I like in Quantum Leap? What character do all viewers like in Quantum Leap, and why is that? The first character that comes to mind with me is definitely Bobo. I definitely love Bobo, the chimpanzee. I thought that character was absolutely brilliant. Great stuff. Absolute vintage stuff. I really thought Sam Beckett leaping into Bobo the chimp was a masterstroke, because that showed that he could leap into absolutely anyone, not necessarily just the human. I thought leaping into a chimp shows a different side to Sam in a way. simply because he's not leaping into humans all of the time. I really think that added a dimension to his character, being able to see him as a chimp. I thought that was real interesting, to be able to leap into another life form other than a human being. Really interesting to be able to add to somebody's character by leaping into another type of living life force. Great stuff. Absolute great stuff. There is a certain Quantum Leap episode, but the first thing I'll say is that I may as well go sit in the corner of the room and stare at the wall as punishment for what I'm about to talk about. But I'll say it anyway, because it's a certain episode that I find interesting in regards to as why people's reactions are the way they are. Now, the name of the episode, when I've seen people mention it on the internet, people don't mention it by name, but they type the letter B and about a million asterisks after the letter B. I do apologise for mentioning the name of the episode, and as a punishment I'll better get off my backside and start staring hard at the wall over there in the corner. But I'll name the episode anyway, Boogeyman. Now, there may be an explanation out on the net somewhere which I haven't come across, so this is why I'm about to ask these questions. But it's not only that, but I'm intrigued by it as well. Now, I've seen people on the net mention the episode, but they don't mention the name of the episode by name. They write the letter B and a million asterisks afterwards. People don't tend to talk about a certain character that makes an appearance at the end of the episode, which I won't name. Anyone who's seen the episode obviously knows who the character is, but it's somebody that's not very nice. But the character at the end morphs into several different characters that appear on the screen, one of them being a goat. And these people pointing their finger at Sam Beckett and saying to him, "What gives you the right to go meddling in time, putting you right to what I put wrong," or to that effect. Now, my question being is, why is it that people have reacted about the show in the way that they have? What I mean by that is that people don't mention the name of the episode by name. They write the letter B with a million asterisks afterwards. People don't name a certain character in the episode by name, if at all. I haven't even seen people mention the episode very often, if at all. I've only seen people mention the episode online, not very often actually. But My point is this. Is there controversy about the episode that have made people react in the way that they have, that they won't mention the episode by name or the character in the episode or mention the episode at all, if at all? Is there mystery about the episode that have made people react the way that they have about the episode? What originated in people reacting that the way that they have about the episode, that they don't mention it very often, if at all? Do people talk about the episode very often? And if so, why? What were the origins that have made people react about the episode in the way that they have, that they may not talk about the episode so often, or mention it by name, or mention a specific character in the episode? By that I mean the ending. Is there an unanswered question to the episode to have made the people who view this show react the way that they have? Is it one of those unsolved mysteries where the episode asks a question, the people have reacted to it in the way that they have, but there's no reason why? Or is it one of those episodes that people have gone off and reacted the way that they have, but there's a reason to it? I'm just real intrigued into stepping inside people's heads, looking at their brains and their minds, and looking at what they think and why, what they feel, stepping into somebody else's body and seeing how they feel about the episode, and why the episode won't be mentioned by name, or the specific character not being mentioned. Or am I just seeing things and it's just completely harmless? Or just an in-joke that people have about that particular episode? I'm not so sure. But everybody, please feel free to correct me on this question, to give me an insight into what people feel and think about the episode and why it won't be mentioned so often by name or a specific character that appears at the end. Being that I know that is a punishment that I'll have to sit in every corner of every room in my house and stare at walls for a very, very, very long time for bringing this topic up. But it's just one that incredibly pulls me in and makes me interested in seeing how people's minds tick, and what makes it about the episode that people don't mention it by name, don't mention a specific character, that they may or may not talk about the episode very often, if at all, or what makes people talk about the episode but be vague about it. I don't know. But I really find it interesting, this show, people's reaction, how that originated, the reaction, and why people react to it, and what made them react that way, and what's the connection between the show and people's reaction and why. I find it real interesting. And I'll leave this chat on this final note that I better get up off my backside. Firstly, I'll apologise for mentioning the episode, but secondly, I'll get up off my backside and I'll be walking to the corner of the room over there and sitting down and staring at the wall in the corner of the room for a very, very long time as a punishment for bringing up this episode. So I apologise for bringing up this episode, and I'll get up off my backside and walk to the corner of the room as a punishment right now. So off I go.